learning about money from a man who built a global empire teaching people how to become rich, only to wake up one day and see headlines claiming he went bankrupt. For millions of people around the world, that moment was confusing. How could someone famous for teaching wealth suddenly be connected to financial collapse? Was the entire story a lie, or was there something deeper happening behind the scenes? Something most people completely misunderstood. The truth about Robert Kiyosaki's journey is far stranger than the headlines suggest. It involves failed businesses, rejected ideas, massive lawsuits, and one controversial philosophy that turned him into one of the most talked about financial figures in the world. But to understand how a man associated with bankruptcy could still build enormous wealth, we have to start long before the fame. Back when Robert Kiyosaki was just a curious kid growing up in Hawaii, and the two fathers who shaped everything that came next, Robert Kiyosaki was born in Hawaii in 1947 into what most people would consider a stable and respectable family. His biological father was highly educated. He held advanced degrees, worked as a respected educator, and believed strongly in traditional success. Go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, work hard. It's the advice most people grow up hearing. But Kiyosaki says another figure entered his life early, someone he later described as his rich dad. Unlike his biological father, this mentor had very little formal education. But he understood something powerful about money and business. Instead of working for money, he made money work for him. This mysterious mentor reportedly taught young Kiyosaki lessons about investing, ownership, and financial independence, long before most kids even learned how credit cards worked. But here's where things get interesting. Over the years, critics have questioned whether the famous rich dad was a real person at all. Some reports claim the character may have been symbolic, a storytelling tool used to explain financial ideas. Others believe the mentor was real, but intentionally kept anonymous. Kiyosaki himself has said the character represents the collective wisdom of several wealthy mentors. Whatever the truth is, those early lessons created a mindset that would later challenge everything society teaches about money. And that mindset would soon lead Kiyosaki down a path filled with failure. Because long before the best-selling books, his business career almost collapsed completely, and what happened next nearly broke him. Before Robert Kiyosaki became a best-selling author, he was just another entrepreneur trying to make something work, and his first major attempt didn't go as planned. In the 1970s, Kiyosaki launched a business selling nylon wallets designed for surfers and young consumers. At first, the idea seemed promising. The product caught attention quickly. Sales began growing. Retailers started carrying the wallets. But behind the scenes, the company was struggling. Costs were rising. Competition increased. Cash flow problems began piling up. Eventually, the business collapsed. For many entrepreneurs, that moment would have been the end. But according to Kiyosaki, that failure became one of the most valuable lessons of his life, because it forced him to confront a brutal truth most people avoid. School teaches you how to work for money, but almost nobody teaches you how money actually works. Instead of quitting, Kiyosaki doubled down on financial education. He studied investing, business systems, and asset building. For years, he experimented with different ventures, learning through trial and error. And eventually, one simple idea began forming in his mind. An idea so simple that publishers would later reject it over and over again. But that idea would eventually turn him into one of the most famous financial authors in the world. The idea became a book almost nobody wanted. In the mid-1990s, Robert Kiyosaki started writing a book about money. But it wasn't a typical finance book. It didn't focus on complicated stock strategies or technical market analysis. Instead, the message was surprisingly simple. Most people are trapped in what Kiyosaki called the rat race. They work for income, pay bills, then work harder for raises, and the cycle repeats forever. Kiyosaki believed the real key to financial freedom wasn't earning more money. It was owning assets that generate income, real estate, businesses, investments. But when he tried pitching the book to publishers, many rejected it. Some thought the ideas were too unconventional. Others didn't believe a story about two fathers teaching financial lessons would sell. So Kiyosaki did something risky. He decided to publish the book himself. In 1997, Rich Dad, Poor Dad quietly entered the market. At first, sales were slow, but then something unexpected happened. Word began spreading. Readers started recommending it to friends, family, and coworkers. The book's simple concepts made complex financial ideas feel accessible. Suddenly, the message was everywhere. Within a few years, Rich Dad, Poor Dad became an international phenomenon. The book sold millions of copies across dozens of countries. Kiyosaki transformed from an unknown entrepreneur into a global financial educator. Seminars exploded in popularity. Speaking engagements multiplied. His brand expanded into games, courses, and financial programs. It looked like the ultimate success story, but behind the scenes, controversy was quietly building, and it would soon erupt in a way nobody expected. As Kiyosaki's popularity grew, so did scrutiny. Some critics began examining the claims inside Rich Dad, Poor Dad more closely. They questioned the identity of the mysterious mentor. They debated whether some financial stories in the book were simplified or exaggerated for storytelling. Online discussions exploded with speculation. Some fans defended Kiyosaki passionately, arguing the lessons mattered more than the exact details. Others accused him of creating a financial myth. But the debate only made the book more famous. Controversy fueled curiosity, and curiosity fueled sales. For years, Kiyosaki continued expanding his brand, hosting seminars and building financial education programs. Everything seemed unstoppable, until one partnership triggered a legal battle that would threaten the entire empire. And the numbers involved were staggering, because the next chapter of the story involved a lawsuit worth tens of millions of dollars. During the peak of Kiyosaki's seminar business, he partnered with a company called Learning Annex. The idea was simple. Learning Annex would promote his financial seminars to massive audiences, and both sides would share the profits. Initially, the collaboration worked. Seminars filled with thousands of attendees, eager to learn the secrets of wealth. But over time, disagreements surfaced about how the profits were being split. The dispute escalated into a legal battle. Eventually, a court ruled that Kiyosaki's company owed Learning Annex nearly $24 million in damages. The decision stunned many observers. For most businesses, a judgment of that size could be devastating. And what happened next shocked the financial world even more, because instead of quietly paying the settlement, one of Kiyosaki's companies made a dramatic move, a move that would trigger headlines around the world. In 2012, Kiyosaki's company Rich Global LLC filed for bankruptcy protection. Within hours, the media exploded. Headlines spread rapidly across financial news outlets. Rich Dad author goes bankrupt. For critics, it seemed like proof that the financial guru's teachings had failed. But there was one critical detail most headlines left out. The bankruptcy wasn't personal, it was corporate. In business, companies are separate legal entities. When a company files for bankruptcy, it doesn't necessarily mean the owner is financially ruined. Large entrepreneurs often operate through multiple businesses, investments, and holdings. So, while Rich Global faced legal and financial pressure, Kiyosaki himself continued running other ventures. To many observers, this moment revealed something important about how wealthy entrepreneurs structure their finances. Businesses can fail, assets can shift, but experienced investors build systems designed to survive turbulence. Still, the bankruptcy controversy sparked intense debate about Kiyosaki's philosophy, and his response surprised many people, because instead of backing down, he doubled down on his message. Robert Kiyosaki has always promoted ideas that challenge traditional financial advice. One of his most controversial views involves debt. Most people are taught to avoid debt at all costs, but Kiyosaki argues that certain types of debt can actually be powerful tools. He often claims wealthy investors use leverage to acquire assets that produce income. Real estate loans, business financing, investment leverage. According to his philosophy, the key isn't eliminating debt. It's using debt strategically to acquire assets that generate cash flow. Over the years, he has continued promoting investments in real estate, precious metals, and more recently, cryptocurrency. He frequently warns about economic instability and potential market crashes. Some analysts dismiss these warnings as exaggerated predictions. Others believe his outlook reflects legitimate concerns about global financial systems. Either way, the debate keeps his message alive. Decades after publishing his first book, Kiyosaki remains one of the most recognizable names in financial education. But the biggest takeaway from his story might not be the wealth or the controversy. It might be something far simpler. Robert Kiyosaki's story is messy. It includes success, criticism, lawsuits, failed businesses, and enormous influence. To some people, he's a financial visionary. To others, he's a controversial figure whose ideas are constantly debated. But one thing is undeniable. His journey shattered the myth that wealthy entrepreneurs never fail. Businesses collapse. Investments go wrong. Legal battles happen. Even people who teach financial success face setbacks. The difference is how they respond. For Kiyosaki, failure wasn't the end of the story. It became another chapter in the philosophy he had been teaching all along, that the world of money isn't simple, and the rules most people follow might not be the rules the wealthy actually use. Which leaves one final question. If financial education can change everything, why do so few people ever learn it? And maybe the real mystery isn't Robert Kiyosaki's bankruptcy headlines. It's why millions of people are still trapped in the financial rat race he warned about decades ago.